The cow has not fundamentally improved in 10,000 years, but in 10 years we have made beef, pork, and chicken not only more nutritious, but actually preferred on taste by hardcore consumers. Wait a sec. Did he really say that? The founder of He did? Ah, jeez. I've been hearing a lot about the recent Twin Study documentary on Netflix, which is actually about a pretty interesting study at Stanford. You've probably already heard of it, but if you haven't, here it is in a nutshell. The study looked at 21 sets of twins to see how a vegan diet and an omnivore diet would affect them over 8 weeks. In the first half of the study, meals were provided. In the second half of the study, the participants were expected to fend for themselves. They also were told to exercise more and were coached by a plant-based bodybuilder. By putting one twin on a vegan diet and the other on an omnivore diet, they could measure variables that didn't have to do with genetic variations. So, the rest of this episode will be talking about the documentary, some good things, some bad things, and some questions that we probably should be asking. We'll try to cover a lot in a short amount of time, so make sure to stay till the end to see if it's worth your time to check out this documentary on Netflix or to give it a hard pass. Oh, and really quick, I'm just a normal person trying to learn more about stuff, so I'm in no way ever giving any sort of advice. Okay, so we'll talk about the good stuff first. What is fantastic about this documentary series is that it draws attention to the shortcomings or even harms of the standard American diet, which everyone's been calling the SAD diet recently. They focus on how after World War II, malnourishment and low weight plagued the United States and how the solution was to industrialize all food sectors. In this documentary, though, they focus specifically on the industrialization of the meat sector. Naturally, they mention how processed meats are now considered the same class of carcinogens as smoking cigarettes. The series also advocated for increased exercise, with one of the health evaluators saying, "If you don't have muscle, you are unhealthy regardless of your pant size or the scale weight." Most of us could definitely get behind this statement. Muscle mass is linked with better cognitive function as we age, it helps us metabolize sugar or glucose, and overall, it's considered a great thing to have more lean muscle mass. Another interesting bit of information is when a couple of neurologists tell us that 3% of people who have Alzheimer's disease got it due to genetics, and the vast majority of people who have it got it from environmental causes. This means that they believe that Alzheimer's is largely preventable. They didn't say anything about Alzheimer's being labeled as type 3 diabetes by some doctors and scientists these days, and really, to be honest, the documentary didn't talk much about carbohydrates or their potential role in disease at all. Sustainability in the food sector was also talked about, which is a really good thing. We should always be mindful of pollution and if what we're eating is causing pollution or not causing pollution. But as we'll find out later on, their perspective in terms of sustainability, is incredibly biased. The overall idea of a documentary tracking a scientific study was really, really appealing to me, and I'm sure that a lot of us would really like to see how a nutrition study works behind the scenes, but this documentary left a whole lot to be desired. And honestly, that's where the good parts about this documentary pretty much end. Because out of the 3-hour and 18-minute runtime, probably only about 20 to 30 minutes, I'd say, were devoted to the study. I didn't actually check, I'm just kind of guessing. But it really wasn't very much time at all. And I actually wanted to learn more about the study. What I got was basically an advertisement for a vegan lifestyle, Impossible Burgers, a revolutionary cashew-based mozzarella cheese, and a case study of how the New York City mayor reversed his type 2 diabetes with a plant-based diet. Which they also didn't give more details about. Like, they didn't say what he's exactly eating every day or anything like that. The remainder of the series was basically about the beef industry's effect on climate change because of cow burps. I get the feeling that there were supposed to be a few different stories intertwined while the twin study was being conducted, but it didn't really translate well, especially because the whole time I was just wondering how these side stories directly related to the twin study, because a twin experiment is literally half of the show's title. The main thing that I can't really stand about shows like this is the lack of citations. I feel like the directors and writers are assuming that the viewers have absolutely no interest or knowledge in science, and instead of taking this as an opportunity to teach us and improve our scientific literacy, they take the opposite approach and provide us with biased information from vegan or vegetarian doctors, researchers, and CEOs of plant-based companies. Probably a reason why people are gravitating towards YouTube and other video platforms is because there are people that will sit down and take 20 minutes to show us a few studies to back up what they're saying, and they actually comb through the details of the studies. Really, the only episode of this documentary that got into the data was the last episode. So if you're inclined to watch this, which maybe you might want to, just do yourself a favor and skip to episode 4, the last episode. Also, of note, there were these two twins, Michael and Charlie, and the twin with the omnivore diet actually gained muscle mass, while the one with the vegan diet and most of the other twins on vegan diets that were presented in the documentary, which was only 4 sets of twins, basically all of them lost muscle mass. And their explanation for why this twin lost muscle mass was basically that he was too busy because he had to move and he wasn't doing enough resistance training. His brother on the omnivore diet was going to the gym and lifting weights, whereas he was staying at home and doing push-ups or something like that. And that's what they attributed to the loss of muscle mass. Also of note, some of the patients had trouble eating the provided food, whether it was omnivore or vegan. One of the sets of twins, Pam and Wendy, both lost muscle mass and told the evaluators that there were too many carbs in the provided food. In response, the evaluators and health coaches said the twins, quote, "We're not eating enough to be successful," and, quote, "We need carbs to energize ourselves to have those workouts." One of the health coaches who is a plant-based bodybuilder says that a lot of people who transition from an omnivore diet to a vegan diet have trouble gaining muscle because they're not eating enough on the vegan diet. This next point is obvious, but the documentary did not say one thing about people who do not do well on vegan diets. I think most people will do well on vegan diets compared to the standard American diet, but there's enough evidence at this point to show that not everyone can stay vegan for a prolonged period of time. Which brings me to some major questions that I have regarding this documentary. For one thing, in this video, I'm addressing the twin study purely on what was provided in the documentary, which wasn't much. I haven't included any information that might have been in the published study, but not in the documentary. There was pretty much one point early on in the documentary where someone's family member very briefly mentions how processed carbs are contributing to disease. Really, it's just a soundbite. None of the scientists, doctors, or anyone else interviewed for this documentary said anything about the role of carbohydrates or processed carbohydrates in chronic disease. Ignoring evidence completely in a documentary is just sort of weird at this point, at least to me, because why not form a well-rounded argument and acknowledge that there's not a one-size-fits-all solution in terms of nutrition? The documentary talked about how bad industrialized farming is, but only from the perspective of cow, chicken, pig, and fish farming. Monocropping was left out for one reason or another, and the use of fertilizer or other byproducts from the meat industry weren't mentioned at all. Since monocropping strips topsoil of its nutrients, contributes to rainwater and groundwater pollution from runoff of pesticides or herbicides, and causes destruction of its own, it was also strange that there was no comment on the shortcomings of industrialized monocropping practices. Curiously, I don't think they made the popular argument that much of the food produced from monocropping goes towards animal feed, which makes me wonder if not mentioning monocropping at all was intentional in an attempt to strengthen the plant-based argument. One of the last areas they didn't talk about was supplementation. Even some of the most famous vegan influencers talk about the supplements that they need to take every day. So I wonder, at least for the vegan group of the study, if any of the participants were given supplements during the study. And again, I'm purposefully not looking at the study for this video. I'm going solely on what was provided in the documentary. It just seems so strange. I'm not trying to say that they're hiding information from us, but dang, if you want to convert someone or all of us to a vegan lifestyle, just tell us the whole truth. Give us the pros, give us the cons, and then tell us why you believe veganism will help some people. Because it will not work for every single person, which is completely okay to acknowledge. But seeing as in they chose the biased route, they really saved the best for last. In the 4th episode, they have this quote from the founder of Impossible Foods, the company that spawned the Impossible Burger. He says, "The cow has not fundamentally improved in 10,000 years, but in 10 years we have made beef, pork, and chicken not only more nutritious, but actually preferred on taste by hardcore consumers." I'm not really sure what a hardcore consumer is, but I would love to hear more details about how the Impossible beef, pork, and chicken is more nutritious than the natural counterpart. I would also like to hear his argument as to how the cow has not fundamentally improved in 10,000 years and what he would do to improve the cow. But anyway, I won't mention what the current internal share price is for the employees of Impossible Foods, nor will I mention Beyond Meat's current share price. And so, going back to the supplement thing, here's a screenshot of the supplements that one of the most prominent vegan influencers takes daily. What's pretty unbelievable about this documentary, other than the fact that it's not really about the twin study, is that it starts off by basically telling us that all of our health issues, obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease, come from the industrial food industry, and then it closes on the fourth episode by showing plant-based meat products and cheese products that are industrial and processed by definition. For those of us who are interested in science and that would like to improve our scientific literacy, the documentary is actually doing a huge disservice to the twin study. Showing more about the process and data collection and final changes over more than 4 sets of twins out of the 21 sets that completed the study would have been really informative. Instead, they walked us through the usual talking points of trying to convince someone to go vegan, didn't view the study through an unbiased lens, and didn't really tell us things like how the cattle industry in Brazil might be displaced by sugarcane fields, which might be causing them to move into the Amazon rainforest. Now, I'll conclude with a few quotes from the documentary. Let us know what you think of these in the comments below. The cow is the most inefficient food production system on the planet by far. The history of disruption says that they, the consumer, will switch to the new product as soon as it's cheaper and better. I wanted to see someone put on lean muscle mass while eating the vegan diet, so I'd encourage them to eat a lot more than they were eating previously.